Today's Japanese slang term is takoshia, which is a extreme shortening, even for a language that loves to shorten things, because this stands for tatoeba, or for example, konna, this kind of, situation, ga ariuru, or possible. So it's used for examples of situations that are possible, like, eating taco or takoashi. So this slang term and this entire video would not have been possible if not for Monster Hunter Worlds being released in February of 2025 to incredible disappointment by the Japanese gaming community. Now, I've never played this game, and I don't want to get into it too much, but reception was bad to the extent that Capcom actually had to release like a lawsuit relating to things about it. But what really matters for our context is because this game was considered disappointing, Japanese netizens started looking into the background of it to see if they could find out perhaps what went wrong. And in doing so, they stumbled across this interview, which happened back in January of 2025 between a developer of the game and IGN Japan. And in this interview, the developer talks about dramatic situations that can happen to any hunter, with the paragraph in question beginning with, for example, these kinds of situations can occur, explains Tokuda being the developer from Capcom who worked on the game. In this long paragraph, Tokuda basically states that while you're playing and riding on your secret, which is like a bird used in the game, I guess, you may see a monster in the distance that is battle scarred from fighting another monster. And even though you don't need to fight it right now or need its resources, you find yourself interested in it, and so you go to it, looking for the huge reward and getting off the path of the main story, but just being enthralled in what you see in the world. Now, this obviously sounds really cool and really fun, but it made a lot of players of Monster Hunter World very unhappy because the problem is that this kind of thing, this kind of situation, apparently doesn't exist in the game. So as you can see in this tweet, while Monster Hunter Worlds is the origin of Takoshia, it is a game that actually doesn't really have Takoshia, and that's the problem. Indeed, even the Monster Hunter wiki for this term notes that this game has much less Takoshia elements than others, as things like fast travel take away from the kind of adventuring that would allow the situation, and actually there's like a character that I guess yells at you if you go off mission and attack monsters you're not supposed to. This kind of situation cannot happen, even for example. Initially then, Takoshia was used to refer to this quote. Obviously, I can't find exactly when people refound this interview, but the earliest use of Takoshia that I found on the internet is from April, and it uses the term specifically to talk about the quote, calling it just full of lies. However, general consensus, again on the Monster Hunter wiki, on Pixiv, etc., is that the real use of this kind of took off in July. Indeed, that's when the Pixiv entry was created. But within this interim, there were other uses, like people were using the phrase sarcastically to refer to bad things, like this person is using it because they got hit by lightning, which I guess is a situation that can happen, for example. And by May, there are 5chan examples of people parodying the entire text. For instance, the one you're looking at now, as someone who hasn't played Monster Hunter, can't really explain, it's probably hilarious if you have, but basically it takes the entire quote and edits it, presenting it as though it's not stated by the developer, but by a monster in the game, known as Clomatris, and it has parodies like to fight it to get items, it's doing it to eat it and rejuvenate its health, and then also has kind of jokes like, on the way, I'll crush a camp. It's just a parody. Importantly though, within all this critique, within all this criticism, within all this critical use and mocking use of Takoshia, the term actually survived because people realized that it refers to something that, even if that thing doesn't exist in Monster Hunter Worlds, is a thing that exists in some games and that they didn't really have a word for. There is, for example, in Japanese, emergento gameplay, which is of course just emergent gameplay, but Takoshia is not only shorter and easier to say, it's kind of more specific, as it's evolved to not just be like a synonym for an open world game, but an open world game where while you're traveling, you see things that catch your eye that make you want to go off the beaten path and reward you for doing so. For instance, by May of this year, you can see people clearly using Takoshia to refer to what they call an asobikata, as in a way of playing, not just a quote or not just an issue with Monster Hunter. So either a game that's full of fun detours that reward you for going off the beaten path, or one that just has kind of random encounters that keep popping up that are enjoyable, even though they don't progress the story, and reward you in ways that can help you out later in the game. There is a bit of divergence in use. For instance, it's very common to refer to Takoshia as though it is something a game can have. Like for instance, this person lists the new Donkey Kong game as a game that has Takoshia, right? Ga aru. But there's also uses that kind of imply that Takoshia is a genre. Like for instance, Takoshia yosu, or like Takoshia elements, is something that you can see in plenty of posts saying that a game has the elements of Takoshia. At least for me, implies that there is some kind of pure Takoshia out there that also exists. And then building off what we saw earlier from the early 5chan play, this entire thing has created kind of like Takoshia kobun, or like Takoshia syntax, again, Takoshia, I guess, meme phrase templates, wherein people take the original quote and play with it in ways that are supposed to be kind of funny. Here, for instance, you can see a long post by the YouTuber Karasuma, who begins with the, same 例えばこんなシチュエーションがあるよ, but then says that Karasuma explains. And then it goes on to note that he is wanting not resources, but recordings to use in a video, but then punched his desk. Daipan is a bonus slang word for you there. And as a result, lost the data. And then instead of saying the reward is very big, he parries it with the loss is very big. So, these kind of changes to make a joke. Other people, though, keep Tokuda's name in the parody, as you can see here, of this person who notes that while riding their bicycle, which I think hilariously they've kind of used the bird's name as though it's like a bike brand name there, an Indian curry restaurant appeared. And you can see key parts of the kobun here are the something shiteruto, especially shisso shiteruto, or like sprinting, followed by a statement that involves futo, or like suddenly, and then sugata ga yogiru, or like shape of them passes by. So instead of a monster, it's an Indian restaurant. And as a result, they go into the restaurant with that bottom sentence there, ishu no shunjun, or like a moment's hesitation, also being a common part of the kobun, noting that they turn around and order some cheese naan, instead of turn around and go chase the new monster. Indeed, in this similar post, making basically the same joke, but going to eat McDonald's instead of going to an Indian restaurant, bad choice. Everything I've highlighted in yellow are elements which are specifically kind of part of this kobun and play specifically off the phrasing of the developer's original quote. So there's a lot you can mine here, and people do make more subtle references to this whole kobun, as in the post you're looking at here by a VTuber, wherein the only parts that clearly reference this whole kind of meme trend are the motomete part, or desire, shiteruto, or once I did, shisso shiteruto, or like once I ran off, and then of course the futo and the sugata ga yogiru. And this person here, for instance, makes it even more subtle by only using the to shiteruto and the yogiru part, is what I would say if the tweet you're looking at did not come from 2024, and therefore cannot actually be a case of what I'm talking about. So while Takoshia is a useful new Japanese video game term, which fills in kind of a lexical gap, and the whole Takoshia kobun is the thing that Japanese people are playing with, do note that some of these forms can just appear. After all, this is a kind of situation that is possible. Hungering for data for this video, I was sitting in my chair running through the Japanese internet when all of a sudden a data point caught my eye in the distance. After a moment's hesitation, I turned around to screenshot it, only to find out that it was a false positive and I had wasted my time, yielding a reward that was not great. On the wilds of the internet, a world where this kind of experience can happen awaits.